What if Major League Baseball expanded into Latin America? Something they've brought up occasionally in the past but never taken too seriously. Could it happen someday? Yes, it could. Will it happen in the near future? Probably not. Why would they want to do it? Well, as I pointed out in a video a couple weeks ago, there's declining interest in baseball in the US. Attendance and ratings are down. They need new fans to replace the old ones. For the countries around the Caribbean, it's not really an issue. Baseball still thrives down there. The winter baseball leagues are the most followed and highest attended leagues in a lot of those countries. In the summer, they keep up with their players in MLB, and they would love to have a major league team in their own city someday. And unlike East Asia, where baseball is also still really big, these countries are close to the US with reasonable travel times. But there's a reason it hasn't been done yet, or even been seriously considered. Every country in the region has something that keeps it from even being considered for expansion. Small population, high poverty rate, high crime rate, a government that hates the US and/or capitalism and would never let it happen, sometimes a combination of all those. There are some places that could host an expansion team someday, but my purpose here today is not to decide whether MLB should expand into Latin America, but rather what expansion would look like, where the new teams would be located, what divisions they would be in, etc. To do this, we have to assume a few things. One is that MLB in the US and Canada keeps its present 30 teams. No expansion, contraction, or relocation. The 30 teams we have now, plus the expansion cities from Latin America. The other thing we assume is that the situation in each country has improved. Their economies have taken off and they're enjoying first world status. Some countries are going in that direction now, others not so much. And with the people being lifted out of poverty has come a reduction in crime. And somehow all countries get along and will welcome a major league franchise. Now it's sounding a little ridiculous, I know. Some of these cities are far more realistic for expansion than others, and I'll be sure to point out which ones they are along the way. I'll assume that populations remain about the same, and their sports preferences don't change. So we'll want to put these teams in cities with large enough populations, and where a Major League Baseball team would be embraced by local fans. Presently, MLB has 30 teams divided into 6 divisions with 5 teams each. The next logical expansion would be to 32, and then they'll go with 8 divisions, each with 4 teams. So they need to add 2 teams, and the first priority should be to get 1 foot into Mexico and 1 into the Caribbean islands. And you'd want to stay as close to home as possible for the first expansion. So if you're looking for a Mexican city just across the border, you've got Tijuana or Monterrey. And Monterrey wins this one hands down. It's the second largest metro area in the country behind Mexico City. It's also the safest and richest, with a GDP per capita almost double that of the national average. I know I said all these countries would be richer and safer in the future, but I don't imagine Tijuana ever catching up to Monterrey. Monterrey is also one of the country's biggest supporters of baseball. They have a team in both the winter and summer leagues. Their stadium seats over 20,000 and has hosted several regular season major league games in the recent past. It's already a proven baseball city. When people talk about MLB expansion into Mexico, they often mention Mexico City, and that can come later, but I'd say the safest approach is to first start in the north and work your way down. And this would not be the first case of a professional baseball team traveling regularly across the border. In the Mexican League, the LMB, one team, Tecolotes de los Dos Laredos, or Owls of the Two Laredos, split their home games between Laredo, Texas and Nuevo Laredo just across the border in Mexico. They've been doing this for several years without any problems. Here's how the league would be set up. Monterrey would join the newly formed South Division of the American League with the 2 Texas teams and the Rays. Tampa Bay would be a bit of an oddball there, but it's only temporary. The East would have the same teams minus the Rays. The Central would have the same teams minus the Royals. As the westernmost team, the Royals would have to join 3 West Coast teams in the West Division to make up for the loss of the Texas teams. And if we were only going to discuss realistic expansion candidates in the not-too-distant future, we'd have to stop right now. Monterrey is the only one that really makes sense. For the rest of these expansion plans, you'll have to use your imagination and be really optimistic about the future. So next, we want to put a team on one of the Caribbean islands, and again, we want to stay close to home. The best place to start out expansion here would be Havana. Yes, there are some more realistic cities in the northern Caribbean, but if we remove all existing barriers, Havana becomes the best option for the first expansion. The city of Havana's got 2.1 million people in a country of over 11 million, where baseball is easily the top sport. If Cuban people had the money and professional baseball was allowed on the island, there would already be a team there. When Fidel Castro came to power, the professional baseball league on the island was disbanded, and there's only amateur baseball on the island today. Prior to that, there had been talk of Havana hosting the first major league team outside of the US, even before Canada got a team. They already have a major league-sized stadium. Estadio Latinoamericano is the world's second largest baseball stadium by seating capacity. With 55,000 seats, it's just a little smaller than Dodger Stadium. Havana would join the Marlins, Braves, and Nationals in the South Division. You definitely want to have Havana and Miami in the same division. Not only are they geographically close, but it could also be a way to energize baseball in Miami. It could be just the rivalry they'd need. The Mets and Phillies would be the only teams left in the East. They would need to rob the Central of 2 teams, so Pirates and Reds move over. The 3 teams left in the Central, Cubs, Cards, and Brewers, grab the Rockies from the West. That leaves the West with the Diamondbacks, Giants, Padres, and Dodgers. Okay, now that we've tested the waters in Mexico and the Caribbean islands, we're ready to go all out for a 4-team expansion, 2 in each area. In Mexico, they'd naturally want to go with the capital city. Mexico City is larger than New York. As soon as MLB got a foot across the border, they'd be aiming for this market. Mexico City's got a well-supported LMB team and a new stadium, Arpelu Stadium, which seats over 20,000 and will be the host of the next MLB regular season games in Mexico. Some will argue that Mexico City is big enough to have 2 or more teams. But the reality is, on a per capita basis, baseball isn't very popular there. That's why it only has 1 professional baseball team now, and 3 professional soccer teams. For the other expansion city in Mexico, we go to Guadalajara. It's got the size, being the 3rd largest metro area in the country behind Mexico City and Monterrey. And most importantly, baseball does well there. They support 2 professional teams. They just need a bigger stadium since the present one only seats 16,000. And here I would stop with Mexican expansion. You could make an argument for more cities to be included, but you don't want to overdo it. It's still going to be a soccer-first nation. Here we've got the 3 largest metro areas spaced apart in a nice little triangle. Adding any more teams would be too much. They would also need a minor league system for these teams, and I think a good idea here would be to use the LMB as its farm system. Right now, the Mexican Summer League has 18 teams, so you could give 6 teams to each of the new major league teams in Mexico, and they could draw players from those teams. There are also lower levels of professional baseball in Mexico below the LMB, so the system is mostly already in place. And here's the new setup for the American League. Same divisions, some will have 5 teams, others will have 4. You'd like to have the same number in each division, but it'll have to be uneven for now. The South becomes an all-Texas and Mexico division with the 2 Texas teams and the 3 Mexican teams. The Rays return to the East where they rightfully belong, and now the East is back to its present-day setup. The Central and the West are unchanged from the last expansion and still have only 4 teams. Next, we need to add 2 cities from the Caribbean, and I think you can easily guess where these will be. Santo Domingo definitely gets one, a metro area of nearly 3 million in a country of over 10 million, where baseball is bigger than it is anywhere else in the world. The reason it wouldn't work right now is because most people there can't afford to attend any games. But in the last 25 years, the Dominican Republic has been the fastest growing economy in the Western Hemisphere, and is presently growing at around 10%. They've still got a long ways to go, but if they can continue on this track, we could have a serious discussion about a major league club in Santo Domingo in the decades to come. The other one, of course, would be San Juan, Puerto Rico. It's already hosted regular season major league games and WBC games to sellout crowds of just under 20,000. This would be a smaller market than the other expansion cities we've gone to here, with just over 3 million people on the island, and the population has been on the decline in recent years due to economic problems. But assuming they get those problems worked out, people stop moving away, and a new ballpark of 25,000 seats is built, this can actually work. Here's the new setup for the National League. The 3 Caribbean teams in Havana, Santo Domingo, and San Juan are with the Marlins and Braves in the South. The Nationals go back to the East with the Mets, Phillies, and Pirates. The Reds rejoin the Central, reuniting with the Cubs, Cards, and Brewers. And another reunion as the Rockies rejoin the NL West, which is now back to its present 5. We could stop right here. As we go further south, travel distances become longer, and it would be hard to do without switching to a north-south setup. But looking at the travel times between the cities of the extreme north and the extreme south in the next expansion, it would be tough, but possible. Some long road trips would have to be scheduled. Besides, we want to expand MLB into all the major baseball-playing countries of Latin America, not just some of them. So here we go with the last expansion, again with 4 teams. The American League will add 2 teams from Central America. The first one is in Managua, Nicaragua. The city's got 1.4 million people. The country's got just over 6 million, so it's got the size. Baseball is the most popular sport there. They have a winter league and a summer league. Both leagues attract large crowds. They have a 20,000-seat stadium built to major league specifications. Of course, Nicaragua is in no position to be in any serious discussions about major league expansion right now, or any time in the near future. But with all 4 cities in this final round of expansion, let's imagine a brighter future, decades from now, where everything is possible. Heading south out of Nicaragua to the very end of Central America, the last American League expansion team would be in Panama City, a metro area of 1.5 million in a country of 4.3 million. There's a 27,000-seat stadium there that's hosted MLB spring training games, WBC qualifiers, and the Caribbean Series. so they've proven that they can host big baseball events. Their rival would naturally be the team from Nicaragua, and there would be so many possibilities there. Nicaragua's stadium is Dennis Martinez Stadium. Panama's is Rod Carew Stadium. Imagine those two being involved with this new rivalry, perhaps shaking hands on the field prior to the start of the first game. Martinez, who once threw a perfect game, could throw out the first pitch in Nicaragua, and Panamanian Mariano Rivera, a Hall of Fame closer, could do the same in Panama. They might even meet for an annual 2-game series on a neutral field in Costa Rica, which lies between the two countries. They do play baseball in Costa Rica, but it's really more of a soccer country, and that's where the balls for use in Major League Baseball are made. And now the South Division becomes the International Division. The 3 Mexican teams, Monterrey, Guadalajara, and Mexico City, are joined by the 2 Central American teams, Managua and Panama. So that means the rest of the American League can return to the way we see it today. Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, Orioles, and Rays in the East. White Sox, Tigers, Guardians, Twins, and Royals in the Central. And Mariners, A's, Angels, Astros, and Rangers in the West. Last, we add 2 more teams to the National League. No more cities on Caribbean islands. Jamaica's not into baseball. The other islands are too small. And that includes Curacao and Aruba, unfortunately. They love baseball there, but there will never be enough people there to support anything close to a Major League franchise. I'd put a single-A farm team for one of the Caribbean teams in Jamaica, and maybe some other smaller islands, so they can get a little introduction to baseball on their own islands. Bahamas and U.S. Virgin Islands would be good AA or AAA sites, and Aruba and Curacao would make a good single-A, AA combination for the next expansion city. And for this one, we cross the sea into South America. One team will have to be in Caracas, Venezuela. In a future where this country of 28 million is wealthy and stable, at least one Major League team would call it home. Maybe another one could be added later, but for this expansion we start with one in the capital city, home to 5 million residents. Baseball is the national sport of Venezuela. The 8-team Winter League is bigger than any other sports league in the country. The largest stadium in Caracas seats 20,000, but it turned 70 this year, so they would probably build a new one with a larger seating capacity before welcoming a Major League franchise. Last one goes to Barranquilla, Colombia. If you're not familiar with baseball in Colombia, you may be wondering why Barranquilla and not the capital and largest city, Bogota. If you look at a map, you see coastal Colombia in the north, the part that sticks out into the Caribbean Sea, right between Panama and northern Venezuela. That is the only part of the country where baseball is really played. Soccer rules the rest of the country. Barranquilla, with 1.2 million people, is the largest city in this region and the 4th largest overall in the country. The Colombian Winter League has 4 teams, and 2 of them come from this city. One of them, Caimanes de Barranquilla, became the first team from Colombia to win the Caribbean Series last winter. We're seeing more and more Colombians in MLB, and they're all coming from the Caribbean coastal region. Baseball is definitely on the rise there, and with so many Venezuelans migrating to Colombia, it's only getting bigger. Just like in the AL, the NL would now have an international division. The Caribbean island cities of Havana, Santo Domingo, and San Juan, plus 2 South American cities, Caracas and Barranquilla. And the rest of the NL falls back into its 2022 setup. In the East, Braves, Mets, Phillies, Nationals, and Marlins. In the Central, Cubs, Cards, Brewers, Reds, and Pirates. And in the West, Diamondbacks, Giants, Padres, Dodgers, and Rockies. That's how I would do it. Let me know if you would do it any differently down in the comments. That's all for this one, and until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya!